Ukraine is on the boil. And not only Ukraine, the entire of the Black Sea region bordering Ukraine, Russia, Sevastopol, Crimean Peninsula is on boil. This is one of these hotspots of the whole of the world, and we have reasons to worry, and more than we, it is the Europeans who have reason to worry about what is likely to happen. The position of Ukraine is very strategic. It is bordering Soviet Union, that was the former Soviet Union, and you're going to find it's bordered by the Azov Sea, and that is the Crimean Peninsula. The whole of this basin that is comprising of the Donetsk basin is a very important region from the perspective of research. You're going to find very important fields that can go to produce huge amount of grain. It was called as the granary of Soviet Union at one point of a time. The region is very, very rich in terms of coal deposits, also in terms of oil. And the most important part is the accessibility that it goes on to give to the whole of the region. And it is through Black Sea that you can go on to find yourself moving into the Mediterranean Sea as well. With so much amount of resource in such a strategic position, Ukraine is bound to be a cynosure of all the eyes. What is now Ukraine, Russia, and neighboring Belarus were born on the banks of the Dnieper River in this region. Almost 1200 years ago, in Kievan Rus, a medieval superpower that included huge chunks of Eastern Europe. But Russians and Ukrainians have parted ways linguistically and historically, and most important, politically. It is bordered by Russia on one of the sides that comprises the entire of Ukraine. And since then, they have not been on good terms at all. Putin, however, has claimed repeatedly that Russians and Ukrainians are one people and part of Russian civilization. And that also includes the neighboring Belarus. They have to be aware of it. Ukrainians reject his claim. Ukraine went through two revolutions in 2005 and 2014, both times rejecting Russia's supremacy and seeking a path to join European Union and NATO. Putin is particularly enraged by the prospect of NATO bases next to its borders in all along this region, and says Ukraine joining the US-led transatlantic alliance would mark the crossing of the red line. Thus, Russia is very inimical to any presence of the Western countries, particularly in around Belarus, of course, the whole of Ukraine, and it considers any infringement of the territory of Ukraine by any of these Western powers as a threat to its sovereignty. Ukraine was part of Soviet Union till 1991 and its collapse. And since then, Russia has sought to keep the neighbor with itself. The conflict in Ukraine has been largely because Western countries wanted to control it, and also the whole of the Black Sea region, and also because of the strategic position of encircling Russia. Russia wants to dispel it. Thus, there are two groups in whole of Ukraine, one backed by the Western powers and the other that is going to be backed by Russia. There was always a conflict, but that erupted in 2014 after Ukraine's 2014 Revolution of Dignity, which saw month-long protest ultimately toppling pro-Moscow Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. Putin used the power vacuum to annex the regions back, that is, to get these regions back. In 2014, the Ukrainian military was under-equipped and demoralized, while the rebels and the Russians were consultants and weaponry, having a lot of weapons in this case, and consequently, these are the areas that is towards the eastern portion of Ukraine that has been controlled by Russia right now. Armed rebels in mostly Russian-speaking eastern region of Ukraine seized government buildings and proclaimed People's Republic in the Donetsk and Luhansk basins, occupied the whole of Crimea and backed pro-Russian people in the southeastern provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk. The restrictions have halted the transfer of Western technology and blocked Russia's access to global capital markets. Russia retaliated by banning most of Western food imports. And Russia has repeatedly vowed that no Western sanctions will ever force it to change the course and policy on Ukraine. Ukraine is not an ordinary country. It is bordering the whole of the Black Sea region, and a region that is going to be known for its strategic location. With a population of 43 million and a powerful industrial and agricultural output, Ukraine was supposed to be the most important part of EAEC, after Russia, but then Kiev refused to join it. The whole of this region, including the dense network of the pipelines and other things, have been at the heart of it. Through a control of Ukraine, Russia will be in a position to control the whole of the Sea of Azov. It will be able to build this pipeline, Blue Stream pipeline. It will be able to easily have a pipeline linking all the way to the western portion of Turkey. It will also be able to control the whole of this Crimean Peninsula and, of course, the port. Through Sevastopol, on the Black Sea side, the most important port on the Crimean Russia can have direct access to Black Sea to export its oil to. This region has some of the densest networks of pipelines as well. Sevastopol also provides a warm port for whole of Russia, and Russia, for any reason, will require this to export itself in the Mediterranean Sea region and also to control the whole of the Black Sea region and the bordering areas. What the West have done is to increase the conflict, is to have their presence in the whole of the Dardanelles Strait. Now, these are the places where you're going to find American aircraft carriers, and also this is one of those places where they have kept their destroyers as well. The presence of American Navy in this region doesn't go to augur well for the stability and peace in the region. Thus, Ukraine has gone on to become completely strife-torn. But 7 years after the conflict, the recession is going to be over. The world prices for grain and steel, Ukraine's main exports, have skyrocketed, and Ukrainian companies and labor migrants are finding a new way to the West. All this has been helped by the West itself, because it is the West that has been responsible for providing market for the products. It is West that has been responsible for aiding Ukraine. It is West that has been responsible for patting Ukraine on the back. Not only that, Russia, if it wants to export itself, it finds itself NATO countries breathing around its neck through Ukraine. And this is something that doesn't go on to interest the Russians at all. It doesn't go on to impress the Russians at all. And they go on to find themselves under perpetual threat of sorts. These days, Ukrainians are much stronger militarily and morally. And thousands of volunteers who helped repel the Russians and so-called separatists are ready to do it once again. Ukraine bought and received advanced weaponry from the West and Turkey, including Javelin missiles that proved lethal to some of the Russians. Of course, they call it as terrorists. And Bayraktar drones that played a crucial role in last year's war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. At present, Russia has amassed more than 1 lakh Russian soldiers on the borders of Ukraine and annexed Crimea in the recent weeks. Now, this has stoked fears in Ukraine and the West that Russia may start a new war with its neighbors and the former province that choose to break away from Moscow's political orbit, and then subsequent developments later on. Now, Putin is very clear on taking up Ukraine and pushing forward and further towards Europe in the next decade too. Russian President Vladimir Putin's motives are very clear. either when he presents impossible lists of demand as a pretext to invade Ukraine or playing a weak hand to try to divide the West and reorder Europe's security architecture in Russia's favor. Russian President Vladimir Putin's motives require NATO to commit suicide or prepare for an inevitable war. If Russia attacks Ukraine, should it happen, it will only serve a long overdue wake-up call for the West about Russia's intentions to establish an exclusive sphere of influence in Eastern Europe and assert Moscow's claim to exercising influence in Central Europe within NATO's perimeter. Europe's security could deteriorate dramatically, and the zone of competition would shift from Eastern Europe to Central Europe and to the Baltic states. This is how Russia is seeing the whole of this development, controlling this region and extending its sphere of influence towards this region and taking it all the way to the Baltic states. And in this region, the entire of Central Europe and Baltic states will be within Russian sphere of influence. Russia believes it's right opportunity to act, and there are reasons as well. One of them is Ukraine joining NATO increases if there is a stronger US leader, while it looks like that Biden's administrative experts and seeking a reset with Russia are unlikely to fall into Putin's trap. Russia considers that the United States is weaker right now and it can go to strike while the iron is hot. The second reason is NATO is completely shattered and broken as European allies have realized that both the United Kingdom and the US have cheated them with respect to fake war on terror in Afghanistan. The trust level between these countries have decreased. Moreover, both United Kingdom and France remain almost like enemies because that has been traditional to begin with, and despite France wanting to show some amount of a power to Moscow and Russia, the rest of the European Union will not be able to muster enough amount of courage to put it up. So, Britain is out, France is out, Germany is also out because Germany exploited a lot of EU countries, that is European countries, for a good amount of a time. And again, the trust level in this case has not been so high. To top it all, Russia knows that if there is a stronger US leader, it will be difficult for this type of an act to follow. So, what will happen now? At this point of time, Germany may succumb to Russian pressure. Scholz is seeking a new beginning in relationship with Russia, and that has sent warning signals to smaller European countries which fear that Germany may strike a deal and reach an accommodation with Russia behind their back. The West will immediately impose tough sanctions on Russia, provided defense assistance to Ukraine, and demonstrate unequivalent support to Ukrainian sovereignty, if that helps. The Westerners are divided as they do not seem to understand what exactly is at stake. The Westerners think that only the fate of Ukraine is being decided, which is of less concern to them than that of Armenia. The same Europeans believed in 1939 that Hitler's demands will be limited only to the Danzig corridor. They are going to be in for some trouble, and Europe's map will never be the same again. Its geography will change, and not only that, the whole of the geopolitics of Europe will also go for a sea change thereafter.
To have more such discussions and analysis, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications on our upcoming videos.